Hi, my name's Julie Knowles and it's a privilege to bring a devotion to you this morning. I'd like to read from Genesis chapter 16. It's quite a long one this morning, but I'd like to read it all. So if you'd join with me in chapter 16 verse 1. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, had not been able to bear children for him, but she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarah said to Abram, "The Lord has prevented me from having children. Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her." And Abram agreed with Sarah's proposal. So Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram had settled in the land of Canaan. So Abram had sexual relationships with Hagar and she became pregnant. But when Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress, Sarah, with contempt. And Sarah said to Abram, "This is all your fault. I put my servant into your arms, but now that she's pregnant, she treats me with contempt. The Lord will show you who's wrong, you or me." Abram replied, "Look, she is your servant, so deal with her as you see fit." And Sarah treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness, along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, "Hagar, Sarah's servant, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah," she replied. The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her authority." And then he added, "I will give you more descendants than you can count." And the angel also said, "You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives." Thereafter Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord, who had spoken to her. She said, "You are the God who sees me." She also said, "Have I truly seen the one who sees me?" So that well was named Beer Lahai Rao, which means well of the living one who sees me, and it can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. Now this story of Sarah and Hagar has been pondering in my mind for a few months now, and I just want to share a few thoughts. Do you know, we often focus on Sarah in this story and her issues of infertility and her disappointment of not being able to have a child. But I want to turn my attentions to Hagar this morning. Hagar, she was an Egyptian servant. She didn't belong anywhere. She was unloved. She was not treated very fairly. She didn't feel like she was a member of this household. She in fact had no choice of whether to have sexual relations with Abraham, as she was an Egyptian servant who had to obey her mistress. And so we join Hagar at the story, part of the story, where she becomes pregnant. And I think this might have filled Hagar with security, with hope that now she might fit in, now she might actually belong. She wasn't a servant anymore. Maybe Abraham might look favourable on her. But that wasn't the case. Sarah decided that she didn't really like Hagar anymore, and it says that she treated Hagar so harshly that she finally ran away. It doesn't tell us how Hagar was treated, but possibly we can imagine that Sarah made life very difficult for Hagar. She was jealous. It was supposed to be her that was getting pregnant, not Hagar. So Hagar decided that this was enough and she didn't want to be treated unfairly anymore. She didn't belong anywhere. She was fed up. She was unloved. She was unaccepted, and her response to that was to run away. She probably didn't have a plan. She was heading towards Egypt, but we don't know what her plan was. And it's at this point where she sits to get a drink from the spring of water in the wilderness. And it's in this place where Hagar has an experience. And in verse 9 it says, "The angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress and submit to her authority." She has an experience with an angel of God. God is looking for Hagar. She's running away. She doesn't know what's going to happen. But God is looking for her, and she speaks to her, and he speaks to her, he speaks to her. He asks her two questions. Where have you come from? Where are you going? And Hagar just honestly turns around and says, I'm running away from my mistress. Now the story goes that the angel tells her to go back to her mistress, and he also gives her a prophecy about her son to be born Ishmael. And this must have filled Hagar with hope, that the God of Abraham was looking out for her. The God of Abraham had a purpose for her life. And so Hagar uses another name to refer to God. It's the first time that this name is used for God. And it's in verse 13. She says, you are the God who sees me. You are the God who sees me. Wow. After everything that she's been through, after everything all the hurt that she has, she realises that this God is a God who sees her. In her desert of despair, in the midst of her wilderness, she is known and she is loved and she is given an identity. She was never unseen by God, and God reveals who he is to her.